Welcome back to Book It. And once again today we're talking to Wayne Kuhn. We've reached the final chapter of your book, Wayne, and frankly, I'm excited still to be talking about it. You called the chapter "Elevate and Then Celebrate," and I thought, well, if you've done all this stuff that we're talking about here, you're going to have cause to celebrate. But you start off at the beginning of the chapter talking about something that saddened you. So perhaps you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, it's interesting. I think I alluded it to a couple of weeks ago, but I think if there is a sad part or it's a realization, is that this isn't for everybody. Let me rephrase that. It is for everybody, but not everybody will take it and run with it, sort of thing. And I think I gave an example of seminars that I've gone to, and I've gone home and I've put the books down and never looked at them again. And that to me is kind of sad. And so I can have an audience that I'm looking at right now, and I know for a fact not everybody will buy my book. I'd love for them to, but you won't. So it's one of those things that's okay, because sometimes it's timing. Sometimes the timing isn't quite right. I've bought books like my own and put them on the shelf, and I pick them up a year later because something twigged my mind, and said, yeah, I should pick that up and actually read it. So it's one of those things that, it's a bit of a sad point that you'd like everybody to think and embrace what you're saying, but the reality is that they're not, and I acknowledge that. Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that if people are watching this, they're probably the sort of person, if they've reached the day 12 of this series of interviews that we've done here, they're probably already the sort of people who will try to do what's in this book. So
Good point.
You can take some encouragement from that.
Good point. Yes, very good.
The other thing that I think is true of people who are reading your book and who are watching these videos is that they're going to probably learn something about themselves and leadership. And you talk about that in the book as well. Could you pick it up from there?
Yes, certainly. A little bit on leadership. I think I bring my personal story to that, and I talk about my background in the Mennonite community, which I never saw. So, like, my dad was very passive, and I feel I was raised that way. A conflict avoider, if I can call that. If there was a problem, I'd go the other way. And so that lack of leadership I felt was always there. So I never saw myself as a leader. But as people read this book and start to visualize themselves as recharged, and they build the confidence and start to become more comfortable with the tools that I give you, you start to build an energy, and people watch. That's one thing that I learned, and very sensitive is people are watching you all the time, whether it be your kids, your spouse, or your sphere of influence, or whoever. They're watching you, and they don't say I'm watching you, but they do. And so all of a sudden you become a recharged person, then they'll start following you, and they'll say, oh, Wayne did that, and maybe I should try that. And Wayne's I've heard this, and I don't say it egotistically, but I'm saying Wayne's always a bubbly kind of person, So there's two types of people. I either annoy people or I make them happy, But that energy is contagious. And so I take that energy and I put it into the word leadership, and all of a sudden, those people watching you start to follow you, and you become a leader. Whether you like it or not, you are their person to follow. And so you have an opportunity. I don't want to say it's an obligation, but but somewhat of an opportunity there to influence a lot of people that need that leadership, that need that guidance, and need that encouragement to move forward. And so all of a sudden that group follows you, and it's well, I get chills just thinking about the possibilities of that. It's just it's exciting. Yeah, something
I
to
read one.
celebrate. That's for sure.
I read one time that Steve Jobs said a leader is somebody that people follow, and it that sounds like it's really obvious, but it's actually very deep.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are doing the things that we've talked about here, if you have become more effective at communicating, if you have a very clear vision of where you're going and you're heading there directly, people have a tendency to notice that, and they have a tendency to start following along, even whether you intended them to or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I took from your book there, is that if you're doing all the things that are in this book, you have become a leader, whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
You've
Mm-hmm.
become a leader, and people are following your lead. And I think
Definitely.
that's kind of important. You also have a nice guideline in this. You talk about the 4 A's, and
Yes, I built on that. I built the book kind of on that and sprinkled it through the book. The 4 A's of recharge. It started off with acknowledgement. Uh, and I think I expand on that in the book, so I'll just quickly go over them. Acknowledgement is kind of like the acknowledgement of what is real, the acknowledgement that life cycles, the acknowledgement that here you are, here I am in this house, in this world. I sometimes wonder, why was I born in Canada? Why was I born in Ontario? Why wasn't I born in Kenya, or Germany? Like, so those are kind of the mystical questions, but the reality is I acknowledge that here I am, and this is what I have to work with. And then the second A is the awareness. Awareness is more internal, and knowing your talents, your skills, and knowing that where you are in life. Because until you can move forward, you have to acknowledge where you are, and that's not geographically, but where you are as a person, and what you want to do. And then, of course, once you figure out what you want in life, what do I really want in life, then what actions can I take each day to step towards that? And I list those in the book. And one of the big ones is education. You have to learn the certain skills, and I think there's seven points I make in the book of things that we can take action on, and areas to build towards that. So now we're acknowledging that this is our limitations. We're aware of what we can do and what we can't do, and we start to develop that vision of what we really want in life. And then last of all, we have accountability, and that's where if you get stuck, and that's where I hope I can be a mentor or a coach to people going through this process, to encourage them and help them look at the results and say, okay, this is what I've done. This is the results of, again, like, look back here at the actions and the awareness of what I've done, tweak those actions, and then come out with different results. So it's kind of an ongoing process that cycles, and it's exciting, yeah. But I do elaborate more on that right in the book as we go on. So yeah, good layout.
it's interesting. You wrap that up with when you've gotten to some results, and then immediately after that you talk about um, something that Stephen Covey goes into in his 7 Habits, the idea of starting with the end in mind.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
it's something that I was reminded of is when I was learning to drive a few years back. Um, my driving instructor said, you're drifting towards the center line. Why, do you know why you're doing that? And I said, no, why? He says, because that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the center
Wow.
line of the road. He says, I want you to drive looking down the road. Look at least
Okay.
5 or 6 car lengths ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
And I started doing that, and my car was dead centered in the lane that I was in. And he said, the reason is you tend to aim towards what you're looking at.
Wow, that's good. That's good. And
And you
that's
talk about
where
this in the book.
yeah. And we talked yesterday a bit about the visualization, the process, and I talk about this in this chapter about building that vision. Um, uh, we talked about who we want to become. I think the best scenario or the best visual I give people is to pretend that you are an actor. And it was asked of me years ago, are you the lead character, or are you just a side extra or something in the play of life? So here we have our life. And so if we're a lead character, what does that character look like? What do they say? How do they, and you build that vision around you. And to me, that would be what Stephen Covey is saying is when you see what your end result will be, the person you want to be, all the pieces that put together in the end result, then you can step back from there and say, okay, what are the steps I need to do each day to get towards that? And that doesn't mean there won't be hiccups and setbacks and that, but if you keep that vision in a clear mind, the best, I remember, I don't think I mentioned it before, but the best example I was told is that it's on a mountain. Like, let's say you see far away a mountain peak that you're heading for, but you're in the foothills, and so you'll go up and down, and sometimes you'll be in the valley of the foothill and you can't see the mountain. Then you get up to the top of the foothill and you go, oh, there it is. And so life is like that. Sometimes the goal will not be real clear. And so, but as soon as you get up to the foothill again, there it is. So even though it's not always in front of you, you keep it in your mind, and therefore it'll always be there. And I think that's where a little bit of faith, a belief, you have to believe in what you're doing, and have faith that it's out there. I just have to keep working towards that, and do the things daily to reach that goal, reach the summit, they call it, sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. So yeah,
There's one final thing that I want to talk about before we wrap up talking
yeah,
about your book, and that
yeah.
is the idea of celebrating your wins.
Oh
And
yes.
one of the images that you've given me, and which I always think of now when I'm talking about you, is the red balloon. And in the book, you talk about seeing the red balloon, tethered so that it doesn't float all over the room. But
Yeah, yeah.
I almost think floating all over the room would be kind of cool.
Well, when the helium leaves the balloon, sometimes the balloon will last for a while, but it does go down, so they get a little
Yeah,
tired.
it tends to sink.
Yeah.
If you've ever had those stippled ceilings, the balloon floats up to the ceiling and it can pop.
Oh
So,
yes, yes, it does. It does. That happens. That happens.
but getting back to the reason for the red balloon is the idea of celebrating your wins. And
Yes, yes.
this is something I was talking to someone a few years ago, and this guy was a real Eeyore type of person, like Eeyore from the Winnie the Pooh books. It was like,
Okay.
well, it wasn't really a very good tale anyway, you know. Uh, and this guy was like that, and he had just gotten a huge sale. I mean, this thing was more money than he'd made in the previous 3 months, is what he made in this one sale. And I said, wow, you must be really excited. And he says, yeah, but now they're going to be comparing everything I do to that. And I'm like, celebrate, man. You just had a big win. But this is something that a lot of people do is they forget to celebrate. They
Yes.
forget that they
Yeah.
have successes.
Well, I
And
think
this is kind of how you wrap up your book. So tell me, how do you
that's
celebrate?
true, and I think that the celebrating to me is reminds me of gratitude. It brings that right around, and that is if we celebrate and we are happy with our results, and we can't help but be grateful, and that gratitude is something you cannot be ungrateful and grateful at the same time. It's an all-encompassing thing. So when you're grateful and you celebrate, to me, that's what the balloons, help me keep a mindset of celebration. And not that and sometimes when we don't have a win, we still have to celebrate. We have to look for things that are celebrating. I think Oprah was a big one on a gratitude manual where she said each day, you write down 5 things that you're grateful for, and sometimes they're small. I'm grateful for that. I woke up this morning. I'm grateful for the sun. Sometimes you have to get bigger than that, but it's building that gratitude to and celebrating what we have, and that lifts the energy so that we can move ahead and do it again and do it again, and then some people, I'm respectful that some people do not. Some people celebrate openly because of their energy and their excitement. They're higher strung, so to speak, and other people celebrate, in a quieter manner. I think we have to be respectful of that, because just because somebody isn't going, yahoo, it's doesn't mean they're inside. They're not going, yahoo, like it's a different level. So respect celebration at different levels, but definitely everybody wants to feel grateful. Everybody likes to be encouraged. Everybody likes that feeling of win. I don't think there is anybody that doesn't. They just express it in different ways sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's, again, I was another workshop that I was at a few years ago. This man uh, asked for a volunteer to come to the front of the room. And he said, somebody who's willing to put themselves out a little bit. And so this guy came up and he says, what's your name? He says, my name's Chad. And he says, okay, great. He says to the audience, he says, what I want you to do when I count to 3, I want you to cheer and stomp on the floor and clap, and as if Chad just won the Nobel Prize or something. Just, like give him everything you've got. And he says, for
Yeah.
your part, Chad, what I want you to do is just take it in. I don't want you to posture and bow or anything like that. Just take it in. And so he says, okay, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. And, the audience went wild. And they were, yay, Chad, and everything, they're clapping and stomping their feet. And he stops them after about 15 or 20 seconds of that. And he says, great. He says to the audience, he says, how did that feel? And picked out different people and said, it felt great. I was really enthusiastic. I felt really upbeat. And he turns to Chad and he says, how did it feel for you? And he says, I'm going to get myself a publicist. That was amazing. And he says, and it cost us 20 seconds of this workshop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet everybody felt better for it.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's something that I think is what I took out of your book is in the idea of celebrate is you've got to give yourself the wins. Now, you're not always going to have an audience wildly cheering you, but that
No.
was sort of an exaggeration to show the point.
Yeah.
That you can have the upbeat thing. Wayne, I want to thank you for this, the time that you've spent with us today, um, helping us to learn how we can recharge and recognize that it is time to recharge. It's something that I think everybody needs to know and needs to be able to do. And so thank you very much for taking the time to do it.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Bud. And I appreciate you taking time. You're excellent host and moderator, and I like the questions that you ask, and so hopefully we give people a little taste of what's in the book. And I encourage everybody to pick up the book and have a good read. Like I say, it's a light read. It's simple but very
It's
effective.
it's not a thick book. You know, you can go through this in about, well, I read it in about 3 days.
Yeah,
And it only took me that long because there's some stuff in there that's worth pondering on and worth
yeah,
rereading and,
yeah,
and going
yeah.
over again. But
Awesome, awesome.
go out, go to Amazon, log on today. You don't have to go to a store and risk getting a virus or something. Just go to Amazon, log in, find Wayne M. Kuhn. It's time to recharge, and then order it because you're
Good,
going to be glad you did.
awesome.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, audience. Have a great day, everybody.